Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Franco Famolaro, and I'm here to introduce a seminar on unification studies with a focus on Christology and the meaning of only begotten in the context of Christian and true parents thought. If you're a Family Federation member, you are certainly aware that for the last several years, the word begotten in English has been repetitively used by our founder, who conveys this concept in Korean, and this concept that she shares in Korean is translated into English as begotten and into other words in different languages. And in many pieces of literature and in words spoken by the leadership of the Family Federation. As you know, there are many different concepts in Christianity and also in other religions, which use words to communicate them. During this course, we will look at some of the basic concepts in Christianity. We will look at the Council of Nicaea, which was an important council in formulating the fundamental beliefs of Christians for the last 1700 years. We will also explore concepts like Filioque, the Trinity, Holy Mother, and maybe some others. We're going to look at the original Greek texts and how the New Testament was written, what language was used at the Council of Nicaea that produced the Nicene Creed, and what was written that was translated eventually into the word begotten. We're going to look at the documents in the context of the divine principle, and we're going to look at this concept in our founder's words, both Sun Myung Moon and Hak Ja Han. And we'll also look at the application to true parents thought. As you know, there are many concepts in Christianity and many terms that we use, like Messiah, salvation, Trinity, Second Coming, Holy Mother, the Kingdom of God, the Kingdom of Heaven, and begotten. Such biblical and theological terms have long histories and often carry a lot of baggage. People have fought over them and more. And they can have different meanings to different people. To Christians, of course, to Jews, to Muslims, and people of other faiths. Much of our time is spent communicating with people of different cultures, different languages, different religious backgrounds. So I find it important that we understand what we communicate so that we can be more effective in the way that we communicate. It's like apples and oranges. If I tell you that a fruit which has a red or green exterior skin and a white interior is an orange, you may find it difficult to understand what I mean. Or the other way around, if I tell you that the orange is an apple, you will also find it difficult to grasp. So we're going to look at this area of study. I welcome you to take this course. It is an intensive 5-week course, which will include readings and videos, discussion, as well as an opportunity to express yourself and to write about these matters and engage so that you can explore how best to express yourself in these different contexts that you may find yourself in. So as a Family Federation member, or even if you aren't, I welcome you to the course, and I hope that you will join us. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Michael Mickler, Distinguished Professor of Historical Studies at HJI. This semester, I'll be offering History of Christianity 2, and I welcome you to consider taking the course. In these brief remarks, I'm going to offer comments on the course's content, its approach, and its format. Starting with the course content, History of Christianity 2 is actually the second of two courses at HJI that cover the history of Christianity. History of Christianity 1 covers early Christianity and medieval Christianity. History of Christianity 2 covers the Reformation and modern Christianity. Looking into the history of Christianity 2, the first half of the course covers the Reformation, which is not a single entity. In fact, we will cover in the course 7 distinct Reformations. This includes the Humanist Reformation, which was the earliest, centered on the Prince of the Humanists, Desiderius Erasmus. Then the German Reformation, centered on Luther. The Swiss Reformation, centered on Zwingli and Calvin. The Radical Reformation, centered on the Anabaptists. National Reformation, centered on the reformations in England and France, in which the monarchs became directly involved. The Catholic Reformation, centered on the Council of Trent and the Jesuits, which is very important. And finally, the Puritan Reformation, centered in both England and the New World. The second half of the course covers the modern era, during which Christianity emerges as the largest world religion and a driving force in the creation of modern civilization. In this section of the course, we'll cover the Enlightenment and Pietism, sometimes referred to as the Second Reformation and the Second Renaissance and the Second Reformation, the impact of the great democratic revolutions of the late 18th century, the American and French revolutions, which separated church and state, the first and second great awakenings in North America, which resulted in the creation of a Christian America, the great divide that opens between liberal and conservative Christianity, resulting from the impact of modern science, the 20th century, in which Christianity navigated and made its way through 3 world wars, world Christianity, which covers the worldwide missionary movement, the worldwide ecumenical movement, and the indigenous churches in the developing world, and finally the persecuted church, as Christianity is today the most persecuted religion in the world. In terms of the course's approach, we seek to be both faith-centered and academically responsible. In terms of being faith-centered, the course understands that the history of Christianity is the continuing story of God's living presence and work in the world. It seeks to discern how God prepared the ground for the Christian message and how God has continued to work with Christianity in preparing for the Lord's return. However, we also see the history of Christianity as an arena in which the divine and the human interact. And this makes often for high drama. We'll meet the heroic and the less than heroic, those who are vessels of the divine and those who are obstacles. In terms of being academically responsible, you will be introduced to content identical to that presented in the best graduate schools in North America. This means you will be equipped and have the confidence to engage clergy and academics in ongoing conversation about the Christian tradition. You also will gain resources to engage challenges of today's world. It is a truism that to know where you're going, you need to know where you've been. And there are many lessons from the history of Christianity that can be applied in the here and now. Finally, the course will be foundational for your further study at HJI, be that in theological, pastoral, philosophical, or peace studies. If you are not well grounded in the Christian tradition, you are missing a key component of historical and cultural literacy. And finally, the course format, History of Christianity 2, is a hybrid flip class. This means that you'll do readings, listen to 2 taped lectures a week of an hour each, and submit reflections outside of class according to your schedule. Then we will meet once a week for a 1 hour to a 1 hour and 20-minute Zoom session for review and discussion of the material. This is intended to combine the convenience of online learning with classroom support and interaction with peers and the professor, which characterize on-site courses. I have found that this format provides an optimal learning experience. So finally, I'd like to conclude this brief course overview with an invitation. For more details, please check out the syllabus on the HJI website, and don't hesitate to contact me directly if you have any questions. I hope you'll join me on this journey. Thank you for watching, and I wish you all the best.
This is Dr. Andrew Wilson. I will be your instructor for the course Hebrew Bible. So Hebrew Bible is HJI's foundation course on the Old Testament. In line with HJI's interfaith focus, we don't call this course Old Testament or Old Testament Foundations because while Old Testament is a good Christian term, Jews don't understand the Old Hebrew Bible as old. It is their Bible. So we use the term Hebrew Bible so that we recognize that Jews have just as much ownership over this text as Christians do. And I myself come from a Jewish background, so I can give you a lot of Jewish insights into the Hebrew Bible / Old Testament. Furthermore, the divine principle understanding of the Bible is limited to basically the book of Genesis, a little bit of Exodus, and then we skip over to the New Testament, to the Gospels and whatnot. But in this course, we're going to look at all of the Hebrew Bible, all the books of the Bible. Not every single one. I don't think we'll cover 2nd Chronicles, for example, but just about every book of the Bible will be covered. So you will get a comprehensive look at the entire Hebrew Bible / Old Testament. That way you can encounter the prophets, the Hebrew prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, who had a great influence in the development of the Jewish faith and in the development of modern Christian faith, because the prophets spoke a lot about social justice. They spoke a lot about creating a good society where the values of mercy and justice for the poor and government providing for the poor, all of these are discussed as part of the prophets. A lot of that is important now if we're going to build a good society in Chanukuk, that we have a knowledge of the prophetic deposit of faith that we find in the Old Testament. Another aspect of this course is that we are going to look at hermeneutics, which means interpretation. How do you interpret the Bible? And obviously, the meaning of the Bible is different whether you are a Christian or a Jew. The Christians view the Old Testament primarily from the standpoint of prophecies and preparation for the coming of Jesus Christ. While for Jews, the Hebrew Bible teaches about the law of Moses and the application of the law of Moses to building a good Jewish society in the Old Testament times. So they have fundamentally different viewpoints, a different hermeneutic or different way of interpreting. So the same text may mean different things to different communities of faith. We already encounter that as unificationists when we look at Genesis. For example, most people, when they look at Genesis 15, they don't see failure to cut the doves as being the key. They see the covenant of Abraham that was established in Genesis 15 as showing that Abraham was welcomed and accepted by God, despite the fact that he didn't cut the doves. But that's not the way unificationists view it. They look at the same text, but they look at it with different eyes. Then we get to the modern period with the development of historical critical method and historical criticism, which says we can look at the text from the standpoint of asking questions: who wrote it? It didn't just come down from the sky. There was an author, or in some case, several authors. For instance, the book of Genesis is now thought to have been written by at least 4 different authors, and they have names, or shall I say letters. There's the J source, the P source, the D source, the E source, and the Genesis that we have now is the product of an editorial process by which these sources and documents were assembled over the course of hundreds of years. Historical critical method looks at the context in history in which the prophets spoke and what was going on in Israel at that time that the prophets were speaking about. The historical critical method is incredibly important for understanding texts in the modern world. And as we live in the modern world, we have to consider historical approaches very seriously, and we will do this in this course. We will also, finally, give you an opportunity to practice exegesis. The discipline of exegesis is very important for anyone who is going to be a pastor or a minister and has to give a sermon on a topic from the Bible. Exegesis means looking at a biblical text, reading it, and understanding what that text is teaching, and looking at it from the perspective of theology, or looking at it from the perspective of history, or looking at it from the perspective of what God is trying to tell the community of faith. How do you bring out the meaning of a text? Exegesis means to draw out. Yet often we don't do that in our sermons because we haven't been trained in exegesis. So we just talk around the text and we don't make the text the center of our sermons. But if you go to a Christian church, very often they will give exegetical sermons. This is not a course in giving sermons, but learning how to look at a text carefully, even line by line, and drawing out the meaning of each word and what God could be communicating through those words to the people. That's the discipline of exegesis. And we're going to do that in our course. And we're going to have several assignments, 2 assignments on exegesis in this course. But this is a graduate level course. You're not going to be able to ride on just the understanding of the Bible that you get through your Sunday school lessons or through your Divine Principle workshops. We're going to go deeper. We're going to go wider. We're going to go into more corners and unexplored areas of the Bible that you've ever encountered before. I hope that you will truly find this course valuable for your life of faith and for better comprehending the richness of Judaism and Christianity and the richness of the Bible from which these religions are based. I look forward to seeing you in class.
Hello, I'm Keisuke Noda, Professor of Philosophy at HJI in New York. Welcome to Ethics and Social Justice. In this course, we will explore the questions that quietly shape every decision we make. Questions about right and wrong, freedom and responsibility, and what we owe one another. Thank you for joining me. You will begin with the foundation of ethics, utilitarianism, and the pursuit of the greatest happiness, Kantian ethics and moral autonomy, Aristotle's virtue ethics, and Confucian ideas of moral cultivation. We also introduce two central thinkers in the study of justice and political ethics, John Rawls, whose theory of justice begins behind a veil of ignorance, and Niccolo Machiavelli, who forces us to confront the tension between moral ideals and political reality. We also explore challenges to these traditions: relativism, egoism, divine command theory, and social contract theory. Through real case studies, from the Milgram experiment to the Stanford prison experiment to contemporary dilemmas in justice and equality, you will see how these theories illuminate the world we live in. This is a fully asynchronous online course. Each week, you will join thoughtful discussions with classmates and write reflective journals that connect the readings to your own experiences and moral growth. You will take a structured midterm exam, and you will also create a multimedia ethics presentation, a chance to explore a moral question creatively using video, images, storytelling, or animation. By the end of the course, you will be able to articulate major ethical theories, apply them to real-world dilemmas, and analyze moral questions from broader philosophical and spiritual perspectives. You will also gain the ability to assess the ethical dimensions of your own life, your decisions, your values, and your responsibilities. I look forward to learning with you and hearing how ethics speaks to your life and calling. Welcome to Ethics and Social Justice. I'm glad you are here.
Hello everyone, welcome to Systematic Theology. My lecture video will show a very small face of mine every week. So I just wanted to show my face in a big way in this video to welcome you. My name is Theodore Shimyo, and I'm originally from Japan. I have been engaged in theological studies and teaching for many years, mainly at UTS. Now, I just want to say that it's important to understand the Christian tradition because Christian tradition has been leading the whole world the last 2,000 years. And also we have to detect God's real intention and God's real will behind this history of Christianity and behind this Christian tradition. And after that, I think we have to avail ourselves in order to help that real will or intention of God to be substantiated and realized in the end. So in this welcome video, I just want to talk about this point, which is rather internal point, which I think is still very important. Okay, I think this is it. Thank you again, and let's really enjoy our class, please interact with each other through this course, of course, which is an online course. Thank you so much again. See you soon.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Thomas Walsh, and I'm happy to be teaching at HJI the course on world religions and the encounter with religious pluralism. I think it's a very important course, relates directly to the relationship between religion and peace. We will be reviewing the great religions of the world, both the major religions and minor religions, new religious movements, Hinduism. We see some of the principles who've been important figures throughout the history of Hinduism. We'll look at Buddhism, founded by Siddhartha Gautama 2,500 years ago, and its core teachings, and Judaism, which is the foundation for both Christianity and Islam. We'll look at Islam and, of course, Christianity, and we'll be looking at how should we view the other that we encounter in the world. And I have here some important pictures that represent teachings of Jesus on this topic, or the New Testament, I should say. If we look here in this top center, this is a rendering of the visit of the three wise men from the East. These were people of some faith who were neither Jews nor certainly not Christians. This is the very birth of Jesus. But you have this, in a sense, a very primal interreligious encounter of these royalty from the East who have traveled afar to meet this newborn baby. Next, over here, just to the right of that photo, is a rendering of the Good Samaritan. And again, the Samaritan was held up by Jesus as a model of living the good life, love of neighbor. And so the Samaritan was not a respected religious tradition in the environment that Jesus was in, but that he referred to that person as having represented practices that represented the ideals even of Jesus' own teaching. The lower left, we have an encounter of Jesus with a Canaanite woman, and Jesus first resists listening to the woman and offering assistance, but later gives in to her, beseeching him for assistance. And he points to her among his disciples, said, "Look, this woman, she's a Canaanite. She's not of the chosen people, of the Jewish people, but her faith surpasses many within the Jewish, or within among his own disciples, the emerging Christian movement." And this final photo on the bottom is of a Roman centurion, neither Jew nor Christian nor Samaritan nor Canaanite, a Roman official of the Roman Empire, who comes to Jesus and recognizes something in Jesus and seeks Jesus' blessing. And Jesus used them as an example before his disciples, saying, "Look at the faith of this man who has not even been taught by me. His faith exceeds the faith of many of you, my own disciples." So this is something about looking at the other. So we'll be dealing with what we call religious pluralism. How do we look at people from other religions? How does it relate to peace? There's a famous saying by the theologian Hans Kung, who said, "There's no peace among the nations without peace among the religions, and no peace among the religions without dialogue among religions." And in order for dialogue to take place, we must have respect, understanding, appreciation, and we must learn about one another. So this brings us into this area called theology of religions. How do we think theologically about other religions? There are different models or types. One is the exclusivist type. There's a saying from early Christianity, extra ecclesia nulla salus, meaning outside of the church, there's no salvation for anyone. That's an exclusivist approach. There's a type that's sometimes referred to as a replacement theology, that religion A is going to replace religion B one day, and that is the goal of a religion. Another approach is more inclusivist, accepting mutuality of the religions. And another type is called pluralistic, how we accept the plural worldviews, religious worldviews that we encounter around us, leading to the importance of dialogue, both intra-religious dialogue within Christianity, within Islam, within Hinduism, within Buddhism. We call that in Christianity ecumenism, and the wider dialogue between and among the world's religions. I hope you'll give consideration to this course, and it would be my delight if you decide to take this course in the spring of 2026. Thank you for listening. All good wishes.
Unification Approaches to Peace is one of the courses of the Peace Studies program taught at HJI. And it's rather unique because most of the other courses, if not all of them, are about peace studies as a discipline in general, as you would teach sociology or chemistry. However, in peace studies, unificationism has a very specific approach based on the original worldview of the people who founded HJI, among others, namely Reverend Sun Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Chahan. And this one course aims at showing what's unique about our approach, this unification worldview approach of peace studies. What does it contribute that probably other perspectives on peace studies do not? And then the second question is, how can we know? Now, you would say probably, well, we know because for many, if not most of us, who are unificationists or close friends of unificationism, we know already what it's all about. But there is a problem. Sometimes when you are inside something, it's difficult to see it, to have the distance, the sufficient distance to see what's really special about it and how it fits with the environment, the surrounding views. So that is indeed a challenge. And we'll see that most of the material we depend on to know what unificationism does in terms of peace studies is more promotional or informational material. You go to the website of one of our organizations, it shows who we are and tries to show it in a way that attracts interest. On the other hand, scholarly sources, since unification is so new, there are very few of them. And most of them are by scholars, including very high-level scholars, who are unificationists themselves, and therefore obviously have an insider's perspective, or they are by scholars who are often very strongly opposed to unificationism and have a polemical perspective. So we will have to navigate this kind of a special environment that's common each time you try to analyze or to consider or to study an ongoing phenomenon without the necessary distance. Now, in this course, we will essentially deal with what the worldview of the founders that I've just mentioned of unificationism brings to the table in terms of understanding and in terms of activities. First of all, there is the historical, theological, and philosophical foundations in terms of the teachings. We have the divine principle, which you so obviously know about, which gives a certain perspective on things, on human life in the world in general, that can be applied to peace studies, and unification thought, which is a more philosophical elaboration of that teaching that more specifically deals with peace studies. Then you have organizations like Professors World Peace Academy and many others that apply that. Then you have activities, especially centered on the founders, but also others, that are in themselves unique to peace studies, such as Reverend Moon and Dr. Hakchahan's visits to North Korea to meet President Kim Il-sung at that time. That was really quite unique. The fact that it happened, but also the way it went. And there are other, on the left, you see president of HJI and former chairman of UPF meeting a political leader from South Sudan, actually the president of South Sudan, and making a breakthrough in the peace and conflict situation in Sudan. Now, in terms of the many activities, the most important one is marriage and the family, the very, very famous blessing ceremonies with many people. I don't like to say mass weddings because it sounds massive, but you know what I mean. This is a very central, the teaching about the family and the way it's being shown to the world. It's very central, and that directly relates to peace, as you know. But there are many other things: media, global affairs, business ventures, culture, education. And so studying all these particular undertakings, these particular organizations, from SONAC Peace Prize to the Peace Highway Initiative and so on, that will be part of this course. How do these fit with what other people are doing for peace in similar situations and in related situations? So it's a comparative perspective. What is different even when we do the same thing? So here you have on the right a meeting at probably a plenary session of the General Assembly at the United Nations, and on the left something of an equivalent, a summit council, a summit a conference with Holy Mother Han and former Secretary General of the UN and other public political leaders on the world level. Why do we need to have that since we already have the UN? That will be something to investigate. And in doing that, we'll try to look at things realistically as well as from an ideal or idealistic perspective. What's the ideal? What's the reality? And that is always necessary whenever you look at something. And then next, we will compare the way unificationist peace studies work methodically, the methodology of peace and conflict studies of unificationism based on concrete case studies. So you'll have at least 2 and maybe more occasions to look at something in detail, in some depth, some case of peace studies situations that from the unificationist perspective and from the general perspective, some cases. And secondly, we will have to demonstrate, or you will have to, through this course, demonstrate critical awareness of the space unificationism occupies as a peace movement and how it relates to contemporary peace thought and practice. So that's overall what you will be expected to do and to be able to do at the end of this course. And then there's a fourth point that is one that you are already all involved in. Students are encouraged to relate course contents to their personal and professional commitments. Whenever I teach this course, almost everybody in the course is already doing that. So it will bring together what you learn in the course and what you are doing. And that's what peace studies should do always. Thank you for watching this brief overview, and I hope to see you in the course.